If they were to lose this game, it would really send the Klaxons off, and it would really send you wondering not just what is going on with this team, but why is a whole group of players underperforming right now? What is going on at the club?
We've got the beautiful San Siro behind us. You're rubbing your hands with glee because you're going to get to commentate on this one tomorrow, aren't you? AC Milan taking on Juventus. An important game, really, for both these two sides, but clearly crucial for AC Milan. And we could also see 4 Americans on the pitch. How much, as an American, are you looking forward to watching that?
Beyond delighted. I mean, you look at going into the game, Christian Pulisic has been reported as a bit of an injury doubt for this one, so hopefully he'll at least come off the bench in this game. But you look at Yunus Musa, who I think has found an interesting role for both club and country. So much he is thought of as a central midfielder. He's been playing as a wide right player, most recently as a wing back for Milan against Real Madrid in the Champions League, and kind of as that attacking in a 3-line in behind the striker for Mauricio Pochettino. So I'll be curious if Paulo Fonseca continues to try and find a way to get him in the team. It's very difficult to break into that midfield. And then I think Tim Weah might be the pick of the bunch going into this game. Juventus are dealing with a big-time injury crisis right now. They're only going to pick 18 senior players for the squad at the weekend, and 3 of those players are going to be goalkeepers. No Dusan Vlahovic for this game, which means that Weah, according to reports, is going to start up front for Juventus. And that will be an interesting dynamic. He's never been a back-to-goal player. He's very good with his movement from wide positions, but as a center forward, that'll be interesting. And then McKennie has been a really interesting one in midfield. You would imagine going into this game that it would be more likely that it'll be Locatelli, Thuram, and Koop Meiners, who's been excellent for Juventus in recent times. But for Milan, an interesting scenario because they're going into this game, and we talked about this before, Adam, they kind of need something from this game. They can't afford to lose it if they're to keep any kind of distance with the sides competing for Champions League football.
We talk about players who enjoy good international breaks, score goals, create goals, and that transfers into their club football. And all 4 of those American guys we just showed there, assuming Pulisic is able to play in this one, we've got him in the starting lineup at the moment, they contributed big time for Team USA, particularly in that second game against Jamaica, and hopefully that confidence will continue through for their club side.
And I do think that obviously it's great. Pulisic is playing well. His form has been great. But Milan aren't great. And that for me is kind of that next step, not for him to necessarily take upon himself, but I think you would feel even that little bit better about what Pulisic is doing right now if they were a team challenging at the top of Serie A. And right now, that standard to be in there is not as high as it might normally be. You look at that gap in between 1st and 6th, it's only 2 points, which means that league is there to be won, and Milan just are not doing it right now. And that's because the team in the overall is not functioning. If Musa and Pulisic were starting regularly in a team that were up there competing for the Scudetto and were one of the best teams in Europe, I think you'd feel that a little bit better about it. So I think that's the next step. Milan have some issues. For me, a lot of it stems from their inability to press and really cause teams a problem in their build-out phase. It leaves them vulnerable defensively. And I also think if Paulo Fonseca is going to keep locking things down and putting 10 men behind the ball late in games, his team is going to keep conceding goals. They have to keep going and going for the full 90 minutes. I don't think this is a team that right now is positioned to be defensive in moments where they're trying to lock down results.
Absolutely monstrous game in the Premier League. Manchester City taking on Tottenham. City kind of struggling, really. 4 defeats in a row. First time that's happened for Pep Guardiola in his career coming into the international break. They've had the time just to work on the training ground, perhaps calm things down. The small matter of Pep Guardiola signing a new contract as well, which has buoyed the fans. Tottenham, they've been up and down this season. They seem to win a game, lose a game, win a game, lose a game. They've had some other off-field issues to deal with as well, concerning Bentancur and some other things too. And when we look at the projected lineup here, there's a lot of pressure on these players for both teams really to kind of set their stall out after the international break, because if they start this period of games that are coming up, and it is a busy period as we move into Christmas time, with a defeat, and a big defeat for either side, it could be really crucial.
No question. I think for Manchester City, if they lose a 5th game in a row at home to a potential title rival, I think that'd probably be a little bit ambitious for Tottenham at this moment in time. But I do think that for Manchester City, if they were to lose this game, it would really send the Klaxons off, and it would really send you wondering not just what is going on with this team, but why is a whole group of players underperforming right now? What is going on at the club? You look at Phil Foden's yet to score a goal in the Premier League. There are lots of the attacking, even Savinho, who I thought has gotten off to a good start. He's yet to score in the Premier League. Kevin De Bruyne, for me, could be the player, though, that really influences this game, because we've talked about Rodri being out for a while, but I think because De Bruyne has had spells out injured before, it's not really as notable. But I think if you have both Rodri and De Bruyne, it limits the ability of that midfield to pass over long distance. I think that's one of the things that they miss, and it's always thought of with Guardiola teams, tiki-taka, but every once in a while, Rodri hits a big switch. De Bruyne hits a big switch, a big bent cross, particularly to Erling Haaland. That relationship with Haaland is a huge part of how they score goals. But again, I think similar to the story that I just mentioned with Milan, they have to be careful with not being overly defensive, especially against a Tottenham team that will not be afraid to attack them, will not be afraid to have possession of the ball in this game, because that is the way under Ange Postecoglou. Brighton, in the last 30 minutes of that last Premier League game, Man City, I thought, were very good for an hour. Last half hour, they were nowhere in the game. And I think that can't happen again against Spurs.
But the Spurs fans that I talk to are worried about these four names here, because if that's the defensive line that starts, they've obviously been handed...
But you know, Adam, they're not going to be afraid that even if it is Davies and Dragoshin and Porro and Udogie, they're going to go. They're going to go attack their opponent. They have one speed, and that's attack the opponent, even if it's away at the Etihad. So, yeah, they'll have periods where they probably won't have possession, and Guardiola's team will control the ball. But you also know that it's not going to be on them to defend for 90 minutes.
What's your assessment of the Ange Postecoglou project so far? As we mentioned just there, he's been dealt some difficult hands, really, in the last few weeks with injuries, players out for various other things, suspensions as well. But that trend of winning a game, losing a game, winning a game, losing a game, you never really know where you stand with Spurs at the moment. They look really impressive, and then they follow it up with a really poor performance. How much do you think that is down to what the manager's giving to the players off the pitch?
I think he leaves them vulnerable. And part of that is because that's what he wants to do. And he wants to attack teams and go at them and play with real verticality and get into the depth and create cutback lanes and a lot of low-angle balls and crosses. And just, it's kind of meant to bombard the opponent to the point where they just eventually break and they concede. But if they're not coming out of the traps in the first 15 minutes and getting a goal, you can kind of see them conceding. And I think that inability to control the game, because they're just going at full intensity for the full 90 minutes, I think leaves them vulnerable, but that's by design. And so they've got to get goals quicker in games. I don't think they've scored enough early goals. They end up conceding first a lot, and they can produce comeback efforts, but that's not a way to sustainably win games over the long term. So I think they've got to get more early goals. I think you just need more production, particularly from the likes of Brendan Johnson, Solanke as well on that forward line. But, I mean, you're talking about assessing the state of the Postecoglou project. A lot of these players are his players. You can kind of go up and down. Brennan Johnson, Solanke, Kulusevski, Sarr, Basuma, Dragoshin, Vicario, Udogie, they're all players that came in under Ange Postecoglou, so they've got to be more consistent.
Spurs did win the last time these two sides met not too long ago in the Carabao Cup on our network, so they can take that as potentially a positive. Now, we were set a little bit of homework prior to the show, pick out our underrated matches for the weekend. What have you gone for?
So I've gone for Napoli-Roma, which is a little bit biased, another game that I'm commentating here for us here live on the Golazo Network from noon on Sunday. Claudio Ranieri is coming in as the new manager of Roma, their third manager this season. The calendar has not even flipped to December yet, and we're already on 3 managers, and you just wonder if this is a problem of the manager, of maybe this is a brilliant squad and it just needs to be deployed the right way, or if actually there is something deeply wrong here. And in some ways, it is kind of perfect that the analog for Roma this season is Napoli last season, where they're coming off of winning the Scudetto. They finished 9th and they went through 3 managers in a season, going from the disastrous Rudi Garcia tenure to Walter Mazzarri to Francesco Calzona by the end of the year. Can Ranieri get the good feelings back at Roma, get the fans back on side, because they're very clearly very upset with what's going on with the direction of the club, and that really is the first test, and it's a hell of a test. You look at that first week, away at Napoli, Tottenham in midweek in the Europa League, and Atalanta next weekend. Rough start for Ranieri.
Certainly is. Talking of new managers, I've gone for a game where we're going to see another new manager in the dugout for the first time. Ruben Amorim taking charge of Manchester United away against Ipswich Town. You'd say on paper a fairly easy game, but as we know, Manchester United over the last few seasons, nothing is an easy game. I've said a couple of times already, I've got plenty of friends who are big Manchester United fans, and they are very, very excited about about seeing what Ruben Amorim can do. He spoke in his press conference and some interviews with Sky earlier on today and was really positive. And I think the reception so far, hasn't played a game yet, but so far has been very impressive for Ruben Amorim, the new manager for Manchester United. How will they get on against Ipswich? You'll have to wait and see on Sunday in the Premier League.